Well, thank you, Nick. Thanks for joining us on the Defence series. Awesome to have you on. Helsing, very much in the news at the moment. Lots of people talking about, all the investment and some of the things you're doing as part of Ukraine. So, amazing to have you on. Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolute pleasure, Danny. Really good to be here. And I'm delighted to say you got the real me today, not my AI counterpart.
Very good, very good. And we'll definitely be getting onto that a little bit later on. But just to introduce yourself to maybe the people who aren't as familiar with defence, can you talk a little bit about your background and how you've come to be leading the charge for Helsing in the UK?
Yeah, no, certainly delighted to do so. Well, the first thing people will note about me is that I'm not a software engineer. I'm not an AI researcher. I'm a little bit older than most of my engineers in Helsing. In fact, I joined the army in 1987, so I am a civil engineer and a military engineer by background. So I joined the army in 87, ostensibly for 3 years, ended up doing 20. Joined in Cold War days, and then saw Northern Ireland, the first Gulf War, the Balkans, commanded a bomb disposal squadron, commanded a combat engineer regiment, was privileged to be the commandant of the Queen's Gurkha Engineers. And then I left in 2007 and went into big infrastructure projects. So I ran Network Rail's infrastructure business for the south of England, sort of £5 billion worth of portfolio of projects. I then took over their national supply chain organisation, so their manufacturing logistics business for a few years. But then I got sucked back into defence. I was asked, as Defence Equipment Support was going through a major transformation programme around 2015-16, if I would go back to be the Director General Commercial in that organisation to help with that transformation and to do some of the big commercial deals that were going on at the time, especially in the shipbuilding space, actually around Type 26 and Type 31 and some of the ships that were being built. So I did that actually on secondment from industry. So I agreed to go for 2 years, and just like my army career, end up spending 4 years there. As the CEO's changed and the new CEO, Simon Bolam, who's recently left, he asked me to stay for an extra 2 years to take on the role of Deputy CEO as well as DG Commercial. And that was fantastic, getting back in defence and really trying to drive the defence agenda. But it was also incredibly frustrating just because of the way in which sort of defence procurement and government procurement actually sort of operates.
Yeah.
And I was about to leave DNS and go back into industry when COVID hit. And I started leading defence equipment and support into the National Health Service on ventilators and PPE procurement. And as a result of that, I got asked by the Cabinet Secretary if I would help set up the UK's vaccine task force. So I ended up spending another year in government with Kate Bingham as the chair, myself as the DG, running the UK's vaccine task force for a year, which again was quite a remarkable experience and gave me a huge amount of opportunity to take some of the learnings from my frustrations in DNS into how we could deliver a successful outcome for the UK on vaccines, and that was a fantastic year. But then I finally escaped from government and went out back into the real world, met the founders of Helsing, and they persuaded me that the venture they were starting to create a new defence company, a new software-enabled artificial intelligence defence company, to give Europe and European democracies their own capability. That was so important and so exciting that they persuaded me that I should set up the UK business as part of that pan-European group that is Helsing.
Yeah, no, amazing. And I think that was one thing I wanted to touch on was it's certainly not common people, I think, going out into industry and coming back, and let alone almost doing it twice. Do you think the UK government is doing enough, firstly, to attract senior commercially minded people from industry directly into mod? And what's your experience been with that?
It doesn't. So I think government is very good at getting non-executives, senior non-executives to come back into government who've had successful business careers. But they then go into advisory boards who don't actually have the ability to do a great deal. So we pay an awful lot of people and quite a lot of money to come and be advisory non-executives who provide a bit of value, but not really the true value they could. And government is still run by politicians and civil servants, and the whole of the system is geared around following processes rather than delivering successful outcomes, would be my personal observation. Sure. So I don't think we have enough experience and knowledge of industry in a decision-making roles. They're there in advisory roles, but not in decision-making roles.
Sure. And with, with your, I guess, quite broad experience in terms of in industry and also direct with government, what were some of the main things that you learned when you were, within industry that you've brought back into, when you were with government, and then also the lessons you learned within government, which you've then taken back out to industry?
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty simple, actually. I think the first is, whenever you're doing anything, what's success look like? Yeah, what are you actually trying to deliver? And I'm amazed at how many times, both in defence and elsewhere across government, we launch into doing things without a really clear understanding of what success looks like and what the outcome is that you're trying to achieve. And we don't necessarily get the right people, the right teams together. The great thing about the vaccine task force was we brought together amazing people with the right skill sets in a proper task organized way, with the right skills to deliver those outcomes. We pay lip service to that, I think, across a lot of what government does, and we make the best of what we've got, as opposed to really focusing on bringing the right skills and experience in. And then you've got to let those people deliver those outcomes. You've got to give them the freedom, you've got to give them the tools, and you've got to allow them to deliver success. And as I say, there are far too many processes and such risk aversion across government because of the way, in the complicated way, and managing taxpayers' money is a really important thing. You've got to make sure that you're doing it in an effective way. But I think we do it in a very ineffective way because we measure every single pound spent rather than the portfolio approach of sort of bringing together different things and different outcomes and looking at the value of the total as opposed to the value of the individual pound. So I think there's some real systematic issues over how you deliver success in government. But industry are very good at, if something's going well, you reinforce it. If it's not, you stop it. Government doesn't do that. And we've seen that in defence with some of the major equipment programs that have gone on for far too long and should have been culled a long time ago. So I think it's hard though. It's much easier in a private sector practice where you've got all of the controls under your own command. I actually was at a lunch yesterday with Peter Hendy, who is the chair of Network Rail, and he was saying exactly the same thing. When he was Commissioner of Transport for London, the really great thing was that he was accountable. He owned all of the levers and was accountable for success, and therefore, you could argue that TfL, like it or not, is relatively effective about bringing together all of its different the different aspects of what it delivers. The rail industry is just so fragmented that who's in charge? There is nobody in charge, and that's one of the biggest frustrations. So I think if you can get somebody who is accountable and in charge and give them the levers to deliver, then that makes a massive difference. And it's hard in government.
No, absolutely. And I think it just generally seems to be something that comes up on the defence series quite a lot. I think it's a frustration for a lot of people. I think our military are rightly lauded as being, expert problem solvers. When you're on the battlefield, it's let's put a team together. Let's it's not hierarchical. It's who's the best person for the task, and let's let good people do a good job. But when it comes to modern government, it just feels like we just get so bogged down with red tape and almost the fear of spending money wrongly, because it's taxpayer money that we end up spending it wrongly, and I can only imagine frustration.
Yeah, as I say, it's because we're driven by process. Yeah, we're great in a crisis, actually. Whatever government organisation, people step up and they find ways of doing things, and they do things in different ways, and they find ways to be agile and ways to deliver success, which doesn't necessarily follow the process. As soon as that crisis is over, everything reverts back to the risk-averse, process-following way of doing business. And I feel sorry for civil servants. There's some very capable civil servants across government who want to do the right thing, but they're not incentivized to deliver successful outcomes. They're disincentivized because they are penalized if the process isn't followed or something goes wrong. And if something does go wrong, inevitably the review that follows puts more controls in place that actually sort of takes away even more the ability to deliver those outcomes. So it's a bit of a self-licking lollipop in that sense, and very frustrating for a lot of people in the system.
Yeah, and I think it's nice to hear us well, you speaking about the civil servants in that way, because I totally agree. I think it's very easy for us to criticize, and I think there's some great people in there that are trying to do good things. Do you feel like we are moving forward in terms of being a bit more agile? Procurement is getting there. Are we moving the dial at all, or are we still not really making an impact?
Well, it depends what you think's wrong with it. It's interesting, is that we've just had the Defence Select Committee report on defence acquisition, which says defence acquisition is broken. I don't believe that. I think that's actually some personal sort of views at play from a number of individuals on that committee. What I would say is there's a whole heap of challenges, and it could be a lot more efficient than it is, but it's certainly not broken. It's a massively complex, sort of industrial, political set of interactions, and I don't think the UK does any better or any worse than most developed nations. It's really hard work in all of those areas. But there's no doubt we could do some things much better, and we could be much more efficient, and we could change the dynamic. I was asked to get involved in an acquisition review for the Secretary of State, together with some other sort of members of industry. And one of the things I'm saying is that we haven't got enough money for defence, but we are stuck in traditional long 20, 30-year platform programs, which don't give us the ability to bring the types of capabilities that software-defined capabilities now are able to do. So we've got to find a way to move away from platform-focused programs into capability programs, where we can integrate existing capability and improve it at speed and at pace. And that will not only allow us to improve the outcomes for the people on the front line, but it will also enable us to save money, because we can it is cheaper to integrate existing capability than to buy new. So I think there are lots of opportunities to do things differently, and we're at a bit of a pivot point now as well, which I think we have to do some things differently. We can't just go on the way we've been doing it. We owe it to our soldiers, sailors, airmen and airwomen to be able to deliver in that way.
No, absolutely. And on to Helsing specifically, then you've already spoken about how they managed to tease you back into a role, leading those guys. I think everyone listening would love to hear I think the headlines were around a year ago, putting £100 million into the UK with investment. I think why the 100 million? Why now? Why the UK? What makes it exciting for you and Helsing specifically?
Let me unpick that a little bit. So first of all, what is Helsing? What is it as a company? Well, we're a new type of defence company, and we're a company that believes that software, and in particular artificial intelligence, is going to be key to protecting our democracies and deterring our adversaries. So we are designing technology projects that transform the operational capabilities of both new and, importantly, existing defence platforms. So we can deliver things faster, more accurately. Decision making can happen at the tactical, operational, strategic level in a much more joined up way. There's so much opportunity from AI, and I'm sure we'll unpick some of that as we go through this conversation. But we were concerned that, or the founders of Helsing, 3 Germans, but 2 of them have spent a lot of time in the UK. One of the founders set up the biggest unicorn that's come out of Oxford University. So that was a gaming company. So very understanding of the tech sector in the UK and how to build a business in the UK. That's a guy called Torsten Ryle. The other 2 founders, Nicholas Kohler, who is an absolute AI genius from Munich Tech University, who has won your sort of global competitions in AI research. And then the 3rd founder, Gumbert Scherf, who a McKinsey partner, ex-McKinsey partner, who led the transformation of German defence's programs working for Ursula von der Leyen. So focus mainly on the IT side and IT improvement. So Gumbert knows the German defense organization really well. Sure. And those 3 came together and had a thesis that if we don't do this, who is going to do it? Western democracies need their own capability. If you look at what our peer adversaries are doing and what they're achieving at the moment, there's a real and significant threat. And the only choice that Europe has got is to buy American, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to AI, the transparency of the code, the transparency of the decision making, the ability to have national sovereign solutions is really important. So it was felt that, you know, having a European company, and we're pan-European, but we're sovereign in nature. So we have a German national business, a UK national business, which I run, and now a French business as well. So we are pan-European, but sovereign. And yeah, we felt it was, if we don't do it, who is going to? So that was the genesis behind Helsing. And we've managed to persuade some of the very best AI researchers and software engineers in the world to, you know, join that defense-focused challenge in a way that's been, you know, quite remarkable. I'm just, you know, gobsmacked, if I'm honest, by the quality of the people we've got and how much we've been able to do in a relatively short space of time.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, you've attracted some genuinely world-class talent. I guess it's probably not a bad idea to almost set the scene a little bit in terms of where we are actually with technology. Because whilst I think most of our listeners are within, you know, government or defence, I think almost everyone's a bit confused at the moment, because you hear AI is going to take over the world, you hear quantum technology. There's so many buzzwords thrown out there at the moment. Where are we actually in terms of this technology? What's usable? You know, what are the things that are actually giving tangible benefits?
Yeah, so I think it might help if I sort of just unpacked, you know, what AI is,
yeah,
what it does, and why it's important. So I'm not going to get into, there are lots of different technologies. You've mentioned quantum, you mentioned other things which will, potentially have an impact, but I'm going to focus this on what we do, which is software and in particular AI, because it is right at the heart of some of the deep tech changes that are happening. And if I could, I'll start with a quote from Bill Gates, actually. So this is one from March of this year, so fairly recent, and Bill knows a thing or two about software. And he said, the development of AI is as fundamental as the creation of the microprocessor, the personal computer, the internet, and the mobile phone. It will change the way people work, learn, travel, get healthcare, and communicate with each other. Entire industries will reorientate around it. Businesses will distinguish themselves by how well they use it. So that is this is going to change the world. But I think he's right. This is a foundational technology, a fundamental technology, which is going to impact on everything we do. And whether that is, driving efficiency in business processes or, cutting edge battlefield capabilities, it is going to touch on lots of different things. But what is it? So AI really just describes the ability of a computer to solve problems in a human-like manner. I mean, that's all it is. And we've had AI around for quite a long time. There's been machine learning, neural networks, different ways of computers thinking and acting like humans have been around for a long time. But AI as it's known today is almost entirely synonymous with one method, and that's deep learning. And deep learning was only invented in 2012, so it is pretty new. And it was invented by Jeff Hinton and his colleagues. And Jeff, I think he was in the paper today, actually, suggesting that that AI needs to have more control and needs to have more understanding of how it's going to be developed, and we need to slow some things down. Jeff is now acting as somebody who, having invented it in the first place, or invented deep learning in the first place, is now just wanting to make sure that it's used in the right way for human benefit, and that we manage those risks. So I think that's really positive. But so deep learning is just a methodology of algorithms learning tasks after being trained on many thousands of inputs, and being able then to take those tasks and apply some analysis and therefore thinking to them in terms of what those outputs are. So it's effectively allows decision making to happen through algorithms. And that's important because it can be done much faster than humans can do it. And it can deal with huge and large volumes of data in a way that humans can't. And one of the big problems we've got at the moment is there's just so much data around that humans' cognitive ability to deal with it has just been overfaced, especially in the defense environment. If you look at an electronic warfare system, it's delivering or developing petabytes of data every second. It's just so much data, it's very difficult to deal with it. So that's what it is. It's just algorithms that operate in a way that allows those decisions to be made from inputs into outputs. And deep learning just describes the numbers of layers of neural networks that are now being provided. There are an awful lot of them, hence deep. And it was actually the advent of new graphics cards invented for gaming that allowed that to happen from 2012 onwards. So what we've now seen over the last sort of 10 plus years is that a lot of focus on research labs where this technology was being used, but in the last 6 months it's now getting out into application, and ChatGPT is the obvious example of that. But it's also getting out into applications in defense and other areas as well, which are perhaps less visible. So it's really interesting. It is going to change the way in which we operate as humans. But I think the challenge for us is how we exploit the opportunities it brings, which are huge, for the benefit of humankind. But at the same time, we minimize the threat, and that's going to need a rule set. It's going to need transparency of how decisions are being made, and it might need us to slow down in some areas because the pace of change is just so quick. It's unbelievable. But what does it do for us? Why is it important? Well, it just basically does two things. It amplifies, it allows us to provide new capabilities. So things we couldn't do before, we can now do with AI, and it simplifies. It allows us to take vast amounts of data and simplify it and make decisions from really complex sets of data. And that's pretty important, because there's a fact that I heard probably about 3 months ago that blew my mind, if I'm honest. And that's just the amount of data there is in the world at the moment. So 90% of all data in existence was created in the past 2 years. And that trend's accelerated. I mean, I just found that quite remarkable. 90%. So, since humans have been on the planet, 90% of the data we've got today came about in the last 2 years. And of that, 80% of it's unstructured. It's just, vast amounts of data that's out there. It's unlabeled, it's unstructured. We don't make use of it. We just don't get the advantage from that data. And that is only going to, sort of accelerate over the next few years. There's going to be even more around. So if we want to make use of that data in a really effective way, then we are going to need artificial intelligence to help us do that, because there's just no other way of doing it. And if it can amplify and allow us to do new things, such as discovery of new drugs, discovery of cancers, etc., and it can simplify our cognitive load as a human, then those are really important things. What we do need to do, though, is make sure we've got controls around it to understand how we're going to use it and how it's going to develop in future. And I think that's the challenge. And things like the new task force, which Ian Hogarth is going to be leading in the UK, the AI Foundation Model Task Force, are important parts of the whole of how we sort of control some of these things and manage them. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that is the scary point, isn't it? Whether it's the people you mentioned, whether it's Elon Musk, there feels like there's so many people at the moment saying, let's slow this down a little bit, because it is developing so quickly. And that data statistic is, it blows your mind, doesn't it? And, I guess, for me personally, you need to think about, I usually wear a Fitbit or a Whoop, that didn't exist even not long ago. You count your steps, you count your heart rate, there's almost anything that is a thing can be counted these days, used, I would say good for good or for ill. Yeah, well, I mean, I remember, if I went on holiday 30 years ago, I'd go down to Boots and I'd buy myself a 12 exposure or 24 exposure film. And when you came back, that wet film had to get processed, and you were lucky if you had one decent photo out of it. Yeah. Well, now, how many, literally thousands of digital photos do you take on your camera, sort of every week? And you don't always get rid of them either. The ones you don't want. I mean, there's just so much out there, and you can just see how that propagates. But there's so much opportunity, therefore, to take that data and that information and make use of it. And I think that's the challenge for us as well. But then the data ownership, who owns data, the access to data, how you use it in a constructive way, all then gets into the equation. So it's quite a complex challenge for us as humans to work out how we maximize the effect of AI in a really responsible and effective way, but minimize the risks from it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is, well, arguably it's two questions in one, so feel free to unpick it as you will. But I think one thing that for me seems to be a challenge, which is going to happen, is as you said, that data ownership. Because I think within our Western capitalist society, when it comes to industry collaborating and IP, it's how do you share data to make us more effective without giving away an advantage to a business which is trying to be profitable and make fair value to its shareholders. But how do we do that? Is there a quick solution or anything you thought that this is something that's going to have to happen for us to use data effectively?
Yeah, I think you've got to almost reverse the question, if I'm honest, because there's so much data there. People don't actually know what's valuable and what isn't.
Yeah.
So it's not how do you share it, it's how do you protect the data that is important to you as an organization, as a government, that you feel you can't share. Everything else, I think, just share it, because that's the way we're going to get most benefit out of it. So I think we've almost got to think about, what are the bits of data we need to protect. And at the moment, if you work in defense, everything's protected, even though, actually the reality is you probably only need to protect a very, very small part of it. So I think we've just got to change the way we think about data. There's so much of it there now that you can't treat it in the way that we've done historically, because it's just unfeasible to manage data in that way. So I think we've got to get smarter and cuter about what we protect. IP is going to be interesting, and I think the ownership of information and the IP of information is going to change drastically, because it's going to be very difficult to keep control of certain things. And we're going to have to think about intellectual property in a slightly different way to what we've done traditionally as well. All of that is going to evolve, though. The challenge is it's happening so quickly that we're not able to really get solutions to some of these things before the technology is moving on. So I think that's one of the reasons why we need to start managing the pace of how we develop some of these things to really understand it. But it's a challenge, but it's a good one to have, because the opportunities that arise from this, especially in the defense arena, we can, and we don't have a choice, I suppose, is the other thing. People talk about AI and the use of AI as though we have a choice between using it or not using it. If you are the captain of a frigate, sitting in the Gulf, and somebody fires a hypersonic missile at you, in the few seconds that you've got between your detectors, sort of identifying that threat and it killing you, then you're not going to think about, am I going to use AI solutions to help me mitigate that threat? You're actually going to need them to just do it. Yeah. What you do need to do, though, is know in advance how the decisions are going to be made when that time comes, so that you've got transparency of the decision making in advance, and humans have been in the loop at the right time and place. But actually, it's not a decision whether or not you use it, it's just how you use it, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's a really interesting point. And I want to pick up on that a little bit more, because I think generally when people talk about AI in the general media, they talk about biases when it comes to not stereotyping people, not taking human biases in from that point when it comes to discrimination. But the thing that I think is very interesting, worrying, exciting all at the same time is, how do we make sure our defense-enabled AI is learning from the least biased decisions possible? Because again, humans will have biases to reactions, and I guess, to use your ship analogy, maybe what one commander would do would be different to another. How do we best enable our system to not have those biases and just make the right decision?
Well, the first thing is you've got to eventually have trust in the AI and the way it's working, and in order to have that trust, then you've got to have transparency of how the decisions are being made, and then you've got to be able to test those decisions. And we're creating, actually, in Helsing at the moment, a way of taking all of those AI capabilities and testing them in multiple ways with multiple decisions so that you understand how the decisions are made and how you get that transparency, and therefore whoever's commissioning that can understand what is happening and why it's happening, more importantly. So I think there are ways of doing it. I do have confidence in the military in a sense, though, in terms of how the law of armed conflict and rules of engagement work are such that within that you're always going to have a person who is accountable. Having that rules-based system is really important, I think, for the world. My concern is those countries and governments who don't follow the rules-based system, but where we have it, you're going to have somebody accountable. And if you are accountable, you're going to want to understand that what you are relying on is trustworthy, is trusted, and therefore you're going to demand visibility of the decision making. You're going to want to understand how it's been trained. You're going to want to understand the biases, and all of that is eminently doable if it's built in from the outset, and if the infrastructure is built as well. AI is not standalone. If you want to be able to understand how it's been trained, how it interfaces with other things, how it uses data, where it gets its information from, you've also got to build the infrastructure, the AI infrastructure that allows you to do that. So an important part of creating AI-enabled software capability is not just the capabilities themselves on platforms or whatever they might be. It's the infrastructure that supports that allows you to really understand the provenance of the data, that allows you to understand how the training's being done, that allows you to understand how decisions are going to be made by those capabilities. So that's one thing that we are, and I think governments and defence organisations need to heavily invest in is that infrastructure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think we've done a really good job of, as you said, setting the scene and talking about things generally. I know the guys listening to the episode will be very interested to hear, within reason. I know you can't go into huge detail, but some of the specifics of, what Helsing's technology is currently doing, how it's currently helping our soldiers, its current involvement, and being a bit more specific as to, this is what AI is, and this is specifically how today we are being more effective, protecting soldiers better, and all those things.
Yeah, no, sure. So we've already said that, you can do everything with AI, really. It can be applied in lots of different areas. So it can be applied in the military context, for business solutions, for logistic optimization, lots of different things. But where we focus our effort in Helsing is very much on battlefield systems. So it's on, it's application in combat systems where we think we can get the biggest gains. And we focus it on those areas where we can get significant capability uplift. So we only really focus on areas where we think we can get at least 10 times capability gains. And those tend to be areas where there's a lot of data involved, or areas in which you've got multiple sensors bringing information which can be coordinated in a more effective way. So the areas of great focus for us are cognitive sonar in the maritime space, cognitive electronic warfare in both land and air, effects. So that is bringing together multiple sensors, integrating those with decision-making systems and effectors. So the weapons platforms as well, and bringing those together in a much more agile way. ISTAR as well. We started off in Ukraine, helping them with some ISTAR solutions in synthetic aperture radar, and also then the infrastructure to tie all of that together. So those front end, sort of battlefield systems are where we focus our efforts, and happy to unpack, some or all of those if that's of interest.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Please do go into some of those systems. So, again, most of our viewers are either actively serving or certainly have a very close tie. So we'd love to know some of the more specifics.
Yeah, sure. So let me go through each of them. So sonar is interesting because we're still using traditional tracking algorithms, which the techniques and procedures have been around for about 40 years.
Yeah.
So if you go onto the bridge of a ship or into a submarine deck, you'll still see operators listening on headphones and tracking and classifying targets manually.
Yeah.
And that's a huge cognitive load on the operators. Now, without going into detail, AI techniques can transform, how sonar is received, how it's interpreted, and how you can then define the outputs from that in a much more effective, agile, and fast way. So getting that situational awareness in a much more effective way is entirely going to be driven by AI solutions, I think, in the future. And some of the things we're doing with the Navy and with the primes in that area are yielding some quite remarkable results at the moment. So I think sonar is a great example of where AI has a huge role to play. Similarly, in electronic warfare, electronic warfare now, if you look at the air domain, the proliferation of transmitters, all software, sort of enabled, the frequency hopping, just the noise that's around, the ability of traditional electronic warfare pods and solutions to deal with the noise is meaning that you are losing a huge amount of ability to actually track and operate as we've historically done. And the only solution to that is going to be with AI-enabled electronic warfare solutions. So we have actually just in Germany been announced as the partner with Saab to provide the German Air Force with their electronic warfare solution on their Eurofighter. Wow. So we're going to retrofit our AI on to the Eurofighter and give them a hugely increased EW performance. So that is in partnership with a defense prime. It's a great example of how we operate. So Auralis is the Saab EW pod, a wingtip pod. It's state of the art, really good pod, but actually without AI solutions, it is just not anything like as effective as it possibly could. And more importantly, our AI brings in sort of the ability to deal with future threats as well. So the fact that you're not just buying a capability that's that works today, but one which can evolve and adapt over time is really important. So for us, that's a game changer. We are now we're effectively, after 2.5 years as a company, we're a defense prime. It's a 50-50 partnership with Saab. It's a hundreds of £1 million contract to retrofit that capability. And the only reason we have got that contract is because of the capability of the AI and the absolute need for it to be put into EW solutions. So that's really exciting. I think in terms of effects, Ukraine has really demonstrated that if you can bring together information from multiple sensors, be that drones or other battlefield sensors, and use those to make decisions in a faster and more integrated way, there is significant sort of effect from that. Vladimir Havrilov, the Ukrainian Deputy Minister of Defense, has said this war is about technological superiority, and it is. Without some of those solutions that Ukraine have just delivered for themselves, on the whole, then they will be in a really difficult place at the moment. We've been involved in Ukraine actually for about 18 months and done quite a lot out there, but we're now doing a lot with their artillery systems, their indirect fire systems, and fitting our AI onto multiple drones into their decision-making capability, and also onto their guns as well, and then just linking all of that together. So I'll give you an example. We've trialed this in Germany in a live demo, and we used a 120mm mortar and a vehicle-based mortar. And the mortar commander said, well, the way I normally operate this in terms of counter battery fire is that I need a human in the loop. I've normally got a forward observer with eyes on the target. We'll do corrective fire. It'll probably take 5 or 6 rounds. It will probably take us 2 to 5 minutes to do that. We've now provided them with an AI solution, AI and multiple sensors, be those based on drones or land-based sensors. That information in real time, identifying the target, fingerprinting the target. So you're not just giving a geolocation, you're actually saying this is a specific vehicle, a specific gun, a specific thing. And whether that moves or goes somewhere else, it's still the same thing. You don't need satellite for that. It's all done on on observing that individual item. That information then passed instantaneously back to the gun line, instantaneously back to the into the decision-making systems, so that you are getting first round accuracy of about 80% when you actually fire onto that target, second round accuracy of 100%. So rather than using 5 or 6 rounds to complete that initial targeting, you're using 1, possibly 2. You brought the time down from minutes to seconds, literally seconds, and you've taken a human out of the loop. So you just think about that and how that can be applied and integrated as well, because everybody talks about drones. Drones are just a commodity item, they're just a sensor or an effector. What you actually need is the ability to integrate all those, thousands of different sensors you've now got on the battlefield. It's that integration layer that adds the real value. And that's where AI can make huge difference. The integration layer that fits everything together and makes things so much quicker, so much more accurate, and so much more efficient. Because one of the biggest issues we've got in the UK at the moment is reprovisioning our 155mm ammunition stocks. Well, actually, if you can reduce ammunition requirements by 30 or 40%, as we think we can do using this AI technology, you've got a massive efficiency gain as well as a capability and effectiveness gain. So it works on so many different levels, which is why it's so exciting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's like you said, it's never going to be the hot topic in terms of what people are speaking about, because it's I don't think people think about this thing as much as they think about high end buzzwords, but just like you said, just the cost of munitions, just saving the amount of money that can be saved in of itself is incredible. Let alone, like you said, the increase to effectiveness, taking a spotter out of danger, like hugely effective. So when it comes to that AI integration, and I guess this is looking a little bit forward, do you ever foresee there being an AI program which is going against, going to be working with almost like social media, surveillance cameras alongside drones? Is there ever going to be something which is connect everything, not just in the military battle space, but in the civilian space, and how that all goes together?
Yeah, well, so it could do. I mean, and that comes down to the infrastructure I was talking about before. If you build that infrastructure, then the feeds into that decision making can come from anywhere. That we're just talking about data. The fact I've just been talking about data from drones and sensor data, be that electrical, optical, or EW, or whatever it might be. It could be information just as easily. It could be camera feeds. It could be whatever sort of you want to feed into that. So the ability is there to bring lots of different sort of data together into your decision making. I suppose it's where you are on the battlefield, whether you are whether you are mission planning or whether you're actually in the live conflict environment, as to just how important those different things are. But the scope is huge, and there are different companies doing different parts of that and providing different solutions to it, whether that's intelligence analysis, whether that is bringing in live social and media feeds, or there's lots of different parts of it. The key though is, if you have lots of people doing different things, how does it all integrate? How does it all fit together? So again, I go back to it, the infrastructure, and that infrastructure has got to be owned by the customer. It's got to be a military owned infrastructure or government owned infrastructure. It may be delivered by companies like Helsing or others, but the actual ownership of it and the how you describe it and how you specify it has got to be done in one place rather than multiple places.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you totally. Do you find with certainly when it comes to the sort of cutting edge AI that you guys are working with, and I think we all agree that it does need to be military owned. Do you need to do lots of work with those end users to help them understand how it can change the game for them? Is it so advanced that you almost need to guide them in their decision making, because it is just so far, like you said, so far beyond what some of these 2-star, 3-star users are going to be used to using throughout their careers?
So I think the challenge is that the military, and I was the same when I was in the military, we like to see, touch, feel things. We like somebody to say, here's a product, here's something that's going to give you an advantage. And AI is not really like that. AI is a problem solving tool. So I think the challenge is for the military customer to really define what the problem is, and then we can work out whether AI is a good solution to fix that problem. And that's where the really big solutions are. That's where we're finding we're getting best traction, where we sit down with a military customer and say, right, okay, this is the sort of thing AI can do. What are the problem sets you've got? Where is the best synergy between the two? So we actually did an AI masterclass for the first Sea Lord and his command team a couple of months ago, and went through some of the capabilities, and we were given the benefit of, I think we had about 2.5 hours. That then extended into 3.5 hours, and then first Sea Lord cancelled his meetings for the afternoon so they could talk about what they'd heard. So there is a real appreciation of how this may apply. The challenge is not, I think, understanding, it's how you then specify that. How do you buy software capability? How do you buy AI-enabled capability? Because our procurement systems are not set up to do that. Our procurement systems are all platform-based, sort of very traditional. And I think there is now a real challenge of how do you buy problem-solving capability? So I think people are getting it, and certainly some of our seniors are starting to understand it, but that doesn't mean they can buy it at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? It's certainly going to be something we're going to be talking about on the defence series soon, because procurement underpins everything, doesn't it? You can have the best solution in the world if people don't know how to actually buy it, then it's never going to come into operational readiness, because it'll sit on the shelf, unfortunately.
Well, we've got to start buying capabilities, and we've got to start asking for capabilities to be upgraded, from the day that they're launched. So at the moment, support contracts and routinely don't include any form of capability upgrade. Well, that's crazy. We should be. You can't bring in a new capability now and expect it to operate for 10 years before you bring in an upgrade to it. We are now it is no different to what's happening with your phone, to what's happening in your personal lives. The ability of software to increase capability and improve it is happening on a day-by-day basis, and we need to buy capability in that way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess circling back around to the problem-solving aspect of AI, I think we've spoken to a number of people over the years, and I think having a problem is one thing, but I think sometimes people can think what their problem isn't their problem. When it comes to helping your customers define actually what the problem is, again, with AI being so cutting edge, do you ever find any challenges there?
Huge amounts of challenge, because it's trying to understand what it can do for people and in what sort of time frame. And I think what's the biggest challenge is that people just don't realize that this is here and now. This is not technology for tomorrow. This is not technology for tomorrow's battlefield. This is technology for today. And the way that AI learns means you start off by doing something. You don't wait for a solution. You just start, and the quicker you do it, the faster you'll learn and the better solution you have. And it's an iterative process. So you need to get on and get some data, have a challenge, and start demonstrating what you can do. So our method is to say, well, look, let's have a concept demonstrator. Let's find a problem and we'll show you what we can do. That's exactly what we did in Sonar. There was a problem set, we went away and we literally solved it in 6 weeks. And that's the way to do it. But you need people who are capable of identifying a problem and then being able to work with you to help you demonstrate how you can fix it. And that's a different way of thinking. That's a different procurement way of thinking. And that, I think, is the biggest challenge. It just requires people to be a bit more flexible of mind in how they ask for capability and how they work with new companies to deliver it. And of course, the traditional defence primes, do some great stuff and build some great capability, but they don't think in this way either. So, customers are not used to having defence players who talk to them in this way, who offer them solutions in this way. So it is a big change program that is all about how people think and operate and buy capability differently.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And obviously it'd be unfair to say that it's just the quote unquote new technology that we're not great at procuring and going through the process, because as you mentioned, there's some very heavily publicized fails when it comes to buying the Ajax program. There's been lots of things that you would think traditional defense would be great at doing and getting through the process, and we're not great at that. So let alone something where, like you said, you can't feel it, touch it, see it until it's further down the line. So no, I think that's a totally fair point. Do you think is there anyone almost on the opposite end of the scale? Do you ever have people coming to you, any customers coming to you, almost trying to force an AI solution where maybe it's not the right fit, or just maybe it's not there yet, or even just doesn't make sense to use AI in that sense?
No, that would be nice. not seen yet. No, so I think people are still, and this is moving fairly quickly, So yeah, some of these challenges, you know how quickly defence moves. You know, defence, we measure movement in years and decades. You know, Helsing as a company was only formed 2.5 years ago. So the UK company, I set up the UK company, 2 of us, you know, just going up to 2 years ago. There's now 100 of us in the UK and delivering solutions at incredible pace. So it is happening very quickly. So I think there is a need for us to recognise that and help people, you know, sort of understand, you know, what the opportunities are. But then I think we do need to start moving a little bit faster, because you're not going to get new technology companies coming into defence unless you can break down some of the barriers to entry, unless you can get into decent sized programs much quicker than we do at the moment. Yeah, we invest in our own research and development. So, you know, loads of R&D accelerators over, you know, 5 years with tiny amounts of money are not going to change the dial. What you actually need is to access into major programs and major capabilities, and to be able to prove and demonstrate that those you know, capability improvements are real. Ukraine's great in the sense that it's a live battle lab, and we're demonstrating some of those things now, but still there's a reluctance to believe that that could really be done in the UK or in Germany or in France where we operate. You know, there is a lag there in people's appreciation that this is real stuff that is happening now and could be delivered and improve our existing capabilities. It doesn't need to be done on a new platform coming in 10 years' time. It could be integrated into our existing capabilities today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think given what's the word for it? I guess given how advanced these things are, how advanced the things are that we're building, that it's still got to be underpinned by really, really smart people building them. So I guess to circle back around a little bit, when it comes to Helsing, what do you think you guys have done different than others to attract really smart people into defence, which historically has not been seen as the most sexy? So bringing in really cutting edge, world-class AI engineers and thinkers. How have Helsing done that, and what lessons do you think can be learned in general about bringing really smart, really talented people into, you know, what's seen as, you know, probably not the most attractive of industries?
Yeah, sure. So I think if you look at AI researchers and software engineers and what they want in a job and what motivates them, incentivizes them, the first thing is they want to work with the very best people in their field. Yeah, they really do want to work with those people who are recognized as sort of global leaders. So the first thing we do is we go out and try and recruit those global leaders. So we're fortunate our CTO is a guy called Rob Fink, who was the architect of Palantir's Foundry platform. Our CPO is Nicholas Kohler, also co-founder, who I mentioned earlier. Yeah, so has won more AI global competitions than anybody else. And we just recruited about 4 months ago Antoine Bordes. Antoine is our vice president of AI. He was formerly led Facebook and then Meta's AI research lab. So an absolute global player, well known, very well respected. You get those types of people, and other really capable people want to work with them. So that's one thing to do. So and we treat the recruitment of those people a little bit like Premiership footballers. We go out, we identify, target them, try and persuade them to come and work with us. The second reason we've been successful in getting good talent is that luckily the types of people we want to recruit want to work on the hardest challenges.
Yeah.
And the very hardest challenges in these areas are in defence. So if you are, trying to design an autonomous vehicle, that's a really hard challenge. But at least when an autonomous vehicle comes up to a traffic light, that traffic light is trying to tell it it's red or green. In a military context, that traffic light was blown up 2 hours ago, or it's been spoofed by the enemy. So the challenges are huge in defence. They are so much more extreme than anywhere else. So, but that's really exciting for people who want to work at the cutting edge of these technologies. And then the third thing is that increasingly we're finding that people want to make a difference, that they want to work in industry where they can believe in the values of what they're doing. And I think if you can, traditionally people who've never thought about defence have never really thought about what defence is. When you explain to them how important it is to be able to support and protect our free democratic societies through having strong defence, especially in face of some of the threats we face at the moment. When you get people to understand that, they really buy into it and they become converts, and they really then absolutely apply themselves. And when you get a cohort of people doing that, they speak to their friends, that then accelerates, you know, the understanding and the knowledge, and it all comes together. So I think we've been very lucky with those three things. We've got really top global talented people. They sort of, you know, attract other people, and those other people, we spend time and effort explaining why we think defence is really important, and why what we're doing is hugely important as well. And we also talk about, you know, making sure that the ethics of what we're doing are right. We have our own ethics council. We are really trying to build a European defence company which is totally transparent in what we're doing, and we're doing it for the benefit of our governments and our Western democracies. Yeah, we really passionately all believe in that. Yeah. And if you do believe in it, then that sort of flows down into the people you're trying to recruit. Yeah, and also who wants to go and work on sort of how to get pizza delivered quicker, or to work on blockchain. You know, come on, let's do something really important. Yeah, this could not be more important. All the threats we face in the world through climate change, through the peer rivals who don't share our democratic values. The world is a really dangerous place at the moment, and therefore defence is a hugely important sector to work in, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And to any young data scientist, any software engineer, I mean, anyone in particular, I think done an amazing job of selling Helsing. What can they do to stand out? Where can they best apply? What makes someone a Helsing person in your opinion?
So that's wanting to deliver the very best solutions, wanting to support our armed forces, who put their lives on the line for us. They in defense of our freedom, they put their lives on the line, and we want people who recognize that and are going to give them the best capability and solutions to operate. So I think I honestly think it's a really noble effort. So people who get that are the types of people we want to recruit, but we also want really good people. There's as an example, if you get the very best software engineers, the code they design, they're not just the equal of 2 or 3 good engineers. They can do the work of those people anyway, but because they put such good quality code together right from the outset, the multiplication effect of that over time in your products is 10, 50, 100 times. Yeah. So getting really good quality people for us is hugely important. And it's about quality, not scale for us. We are never going to be a company of, tens of thousands of people. We will be a relatively small company, but we'll have the very best quality people in it. That doesn't mean that other parts of deep tech companies don't need broader skill sets. Of course they do. So I'm working with another AI startup at the moment outside of defense, looking at low code, no code solutions for business problems. Sure. And that's massively exciting as well, because the productivity gains we can bring across a whole range of sectors is massive. And that doesn't need quite the absolute global bespoke talent that Helsing does. That needs really good quality, motivated people to want to make a difference as well. But there's more opportunity there. So I think it's horses for courses for people as well. But coming to defence, because it's a hugely important area to be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's up time wise. I think you've done an amazing job of speaking, not just selling Helsing. I'll be sending you my CV tomorrow in the post, but just unpacking things. So I do think that oftentimes there's so much noise, there's so much hype, but you've done an amazing job of actually getting into the specifics and talking about, like you said, like the real world consequences. The stuff that the lives that are being saved, the soldiers, our soldiers were being protected. So it's amazing. I know you're a very busy man, and Helsing are extremely, extremely busy with all the awards you're winning and all the projects you're delivering. So thank you for taking the time to speak to us, and we hope to see you on the Defence Series again soon.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Danny. Thanks for the invite.
Amazing. Thanks, Nick.
Cheers.